Welcome you to Pulaski County Fiscal Court. We've got a guest with us today, Mr. Austin Prather, and I've asked him if he would be kind enough to open us up in the Pledge of Allegiance. So, Prather.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting. You all received a copy of those minutes. What would be your pleasure? Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You were a third, Glenn. We already had.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all right, though. We appreciate it.
I was talking to him. He distracts me.
Okay. There's no old business to discuss. We do have a few items under new business. First thing we need to deal with are some schedule changes. Our regularly scheduled meeting in December would fall on Christmas, so just we'd like to ask the court if we can just cancel that second meeting in December. I think Joan has said it's okay with her financially. Normally do. Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then the next one, our regularly scheduled court meeting in January falls on the 8th, and to comply with all the change of shift and all the elected positions, we'd like to move that forward to the 7th. Would be a Monday instead of a Tuesday, so we can deal with our business and get going right away.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So that'll be January 7th at 10 o'clock. Next item then on the agenda, we've got a reappointment to the Western Pulaski Water Board. Joel Turpin his term has expired, and I'd like to recommend that we reappoint him. What did I say?
Turpin.
I'm sorry, thinking Jason. Joel Wilson, his term expires, and we want to reappoint him for another term on that board.
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I've got Martin, I think, wants to speak to us on a couple issues here. One in Zollicoffer Park. Would you like to address the court?
I've asked Bill Nykirk to come today so he can add some information. As this court knows, I feel like that before I ever initiate any legal proceeding on behalf of the court, I need your approval. And this is kind of one of those friendly lawsuits, we hope. As you all know and have read a lot about, and Bill's worked very hard on, along with a number of other people, to make the Zollicoffer area a national park. And the property has there's certain conditions that need to be met before the federal government will honor us with that designation. And one of those is that we have to have all the property, I say we, either is it a trust, Bill, that holds the title to a lot of the property that's been purchased, and then the court, Pulaski County, I think, holds title to some of it. But at the end of the day, all that property has to be deeded over to the federal government. In reviewing all of this and looking at all the property and the way the titles are held and so forth, we determined that the Zollicoffer Park, what we all know as a park out there, it's about, what, an acre, 2 acres? Yeah. We thought that was in the name of Pulaski County. Freddie Nykirk, when he was county attorney, thought that he had gotten that taken care of. the property was set aside back in the 1800s as it was deeded to the Sons of the Confederacy.
Confederate veterans themselves.
Okay, Confederate veterans. That basically, I think, since been disbanded. But, so we've got this piece of property that we need to get over in the county's name in order to be able to transfer it to the federal government when they get ready to designate this area as a national park. So I'm proposing that we file a quiet title action, and the way that would work is we file a civil complaint, civil petition with the circuit court here, and they would appoint a warning order attorney, and they basically advertise it and say anyone who thinks you have an interest in this property, come forward and state your interest. And if nobody does, at the end of the day, the court grants title to the property to Pulaski County. And like I said, Freddie thought he had already taken care of that. What he'd actually done, it's designated as a public shrine. So, but we need to be able to deed it over to the National Park Service or the federal government when they're ready to make that designation. So Bill knows a whole lot more about the practical side of this. I can talk about the legal side of filing the petition, but we've got it prepared and ready to go. I didn't want to do anything until I got the court's approval to proceed in that fashion. So,
Yeah.
Bill?
You know, again, obviously, Zollicoffer Carver Park is the main part of the battlefield. That's what was there after the war was over with. That's where the boys are buried. In 1910, the Confederate veterans heard about there being a mass grave of Confederate soldiers out there, and they came down. And actual land was owned by a Captain Trimble of the U.S. Army, who lost his arm at the Battle of Chickamauga. He donated that acre of ground to the Confederate veterans, the guys that fought there. And his organization started right after the Civil War. Well, they all died off. You know, it's just like the Shaker Village. There's no secession after they die. So back apparently years ago, Freddie made it a county shrine because nobody claimed ownership to it, and it's just a jungle. We all know that as a dumping ground, as a way of protecting that property. But it's finding out as we're trying to get into the National Park Service, the deeds have got to be. And so we're being proactive and going on and looking at the deeds and trying to get them ready so that when they say, yes, we're going to make it a national park, it's not dragging out for 2 years while we do all this paperwork on legalities of the different lands. So basically, I don't know, we had to do this on another tract of land out there once before. It is a friendly lawsuit because obviously there's no Confederate veterans still alive. That'd be 152 years old if it were. And that's just a way of clearing up the title to it so that the county would own it so they can transfer it to the federal government.
And the county's always maintained it.
Yeah, it's always
That's how
been.
it got cleaned up, and it's always been seen to by the county, so.
For as far back as anybody can remember.
Is that the only piece of land that's that way?
Yeah,
1 acre?
it's the only one that's that way.
The rest of them's in the county's name? or-
Well, the rest of it's in Mill Springs Battlefield Trust. And there's a couple of tracts that are still in the Civil War Preservation Trust, the national organization. Hadn't transferred it yet to us. We're working on getting that on transferred, so it'd be a lot easier to transfer to the Federal Park Service if we just have one deed to all of it and say, here, one signature, and we move on with it. Well, too, because we won't, the county needs to keep Zollicoffer Park until we transfer it to the federal government, because that gives you all the ability to help us out there. Otherwise, it would be harder. But it's just one of the things nobody really paying attention to until you start trying to figure out if you're transferring it to somebody.
Yeah, and I want to thank your brother, Freddie. He helped out a lot with looking at the deeds and that sort of thing. So
We're hoping to get this done before the end of the year, as far as being the next.
Make a motion, we give Martin permission to proceed with it.
Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Hold on, Judge. To proceed with what, Mark? So she can put it.
Filing a lawsuit, basically, to quiet title action. Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the next thing then,
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, guys.
thank you. And I guess Martin's going to speak also. We've got an issue I think you all are aware of between courthouse and our neighbor, the Thompson Law Office there. We've got a shared wall. back in the 70s, I think, it used to be our building, but we tore out that little section to put in that memorial park there, but we still have ownership, shared ownership of that wall. And we've got an issue that I think Martin wants to address with you there.
Yeah, Bill Thompson, my predecessor, of course, he had the county attorney's office there at one point in time, but as the judge said, that building was torn down, so you got this common wall that's still there. The wall wasn't torn down because of the way it was inextricably attached to his building. And I don't know when that beautiful siding that's on there now was put on there. But
1972 or 73.
But anyway, he's had significant leakage in that south side of his building. Dan and I have been working on this for months with Bill, and we turned in a claim to the insurance carrier, and they denied the claim. And so we're kind of down to the point where it's going to have to be fixed, or his building is going to start rapidly deteriorating on that south side wall, and which is partially our fault also, because we do own part of the wall. It's a party line wall, so he owns part and we own part. The last discussion we had with him, he was in agreement to pay for half of the repairs if the county would pay for half the repairs. I think that's a fair resolution to this, because he's going to have some inside repairs to do on his own because of the leaks. So I don't remember, though, Dan, the exact amount that the bid was for.
Roughly, I think it was less than $10,000.
I think total. So unless that number has changed, I would ask the court to entertain a motion to authorize the expenditure of those funds to pay for half the repair of this party wall.
It belongs to us anyway, right?
Yeah. It's like a line fence,
I mean,
you know.
Essentially, when we researched it, in the 70s, when I say 70s, not to be specific of the day, when the old courthouse burnt, it also affected the adjacent building, which we're probably setting in where the adjacent building used to be, because it's been renovated. So we, at the time, purchased 3 different properties, because the Memorial Garden was actually where T.W. Todd's office is. That's where and so when they purchased it, they moved the Memorial Garden and tore the existing 2 buildings down. And over time, if you downtown, if you had a building sitting here, you're like, hey, I'm going to build a building, can I attach to your wall? And so they would attach, and that being a shared wall. Well, so over time, that's the reason that we got that point. Then in 72, instead of leaving that exposed brick, fiscal court then voted to, take excess funds to repair exposing wall, which.
And that's what we're asking to do again today, is do our part of fixing it.
Yes.
I make a motion, we do it.
Second.
Motion and a second. Have any further discussion? All in favor?
No.
Any opposed?
Okay, I have a question. After this fix is resolved, is it still going to be a shared wall, or are they going to take ownership of the wall?
It will be, unless the court decides to do something else with it.
That's what we hope to do, but it's down the road, can't do it right now.
I've got got a couple positions that we need to fill at the road department this morning. Of course, we moved Johnny Whitaker up to foreman, so we moved Bub Pointer over to fill his place, so that leaves us a vacancy for skilled labor. And also we're going to be moving Dion Davis into a driver in the 2nd district. So we're going to have 2 positions for skilled labor that we need to fill. I've got 2 recommendations. One of those would be Dennis Pittman. Do we need to do these separate?
Probably.
Okay, Dennis Pittman then to start.
Motion.
Second.
Motion to second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and he's currently working now, so he'll probably need a couple weeks before he starts to turn in his notice or wrap up his business. Then the second one then would be Mike Burton as skilled labor.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And then that brings us into our department reports. First, we have Road Department. Jordan?
Just a couple things. First being approval of your road work request.
Copy of the road work request there. What would be your pleasure?
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Lastly being 3,000 ton of various rock for the month of December.
Motion. Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, Jordan. We've got, next will be Adam Scales, got some good news for us.
Good morning. Back in July, I applied for a spay and neuter grant through the Department of Agriculture. A couple weeks ago, we heard back and we got allotted for the full amount, $2,000. So I need to ask the county for a match on that, if possible.
Motion.
Second.
Motion second, just so you know too, this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the largest spay neuter grant the county's ever been awarded.
It is.
Normally they're, what, $500 or $600?
Uh-huh.
1,500 was the highest one before.
1,500 was the highest before, and this is, and it has been recently like 600.
So,
It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you,
Got
I
it.
appreciate it.
motion and second.
Day when it happens.
Well, it was my first one, so I got lucky on it.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Appreciate it. Just
Thank you
if we can get the community to do their part and spay and neuter their pets. I sound like Bob Barker.
I was gonna say Bob Barker.
We're doing a good job at the shelter. You're doing a good job, but
Thank you all.
we really need help, especially with our cat population. Just if people would be responsible and make sure their pets get spayed and neutered, it would help us all.
Appreciate y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Meow meows.
I'm gonna come back to you, Joan, but I've got Aaron, 911, asked if he could speak to the court, so.
Cutter.
We had one of our assistant tax step down from her position, and I need to ask the court to put Jason Hancock in as that position as assistant tax, so we can get the paperwork, stuff like that, back flowing on day shift.
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, Aaron. All right, now we'll,
Yeah, okay. Donnie got it. Got it.
Who made the motion?
now we'll let our treasurer, Joan Isaacs, give her reports.
I think all I have today is our second bill list for November.
I've got a copy of the bill list. What would be your pleasure there?
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Thank you.
All right, well, this brings us to citizens' comments. I've got a couple here today. One was a late addition this morning. I'll go ahead and our special guest we've got is Austin Prather. And I don't know if you're going to present to us or if Mr. Payne is wanting to present or. All right, now look, now I want y'all to notice, he's very decorated, and I guess he's getting pretty close to his Eagle Scout Award. Proud of you.
Thank you.
Anything you want to talk about your experience with the Boy Scouts while you're here?
We have about 700 community service hours this year, and some of them were at Buck Creek site in the nature wildlife thing down there. And we did a few at Mill Springs. We replaced bridges and the old fences. I just thought it was kind of funny because he was up here talking about it, and we're there literally just about every other weekend, it seems like.
Well, I guess this came up here several months ago. We talked to Brooke and talking about how kayaking and canoeing is really a big trend right now, and our Buck Creek is one of the best places in the country to float a kayak. And so we've been trying to, in an effort to make that more inviting to our tourists that are coming to be in this park, Brooke has identified some spots, some put-in and take-out spots along the Buck Creek, and we're in an effort to make that more inviting. We've asked the Boy Scouts if they would be a part of this and help get these sites identified and signed, and they're going to do some maintenance of these areas. But Austin, if you want to talk more about that, this is kind of give you a heads up of what we've been working on.
Well, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak to the court today, and I'd like to propose this project for the Pulaski County government to improve the 7 public access points along Buck Creek that would greatly benefit the citizens of Pulaski County and the tourists that visit our beautiful county. So working with the Fish and Wildlife to create this map showing access points with mileage and information. The Andy Hall at Lumber King has provided all the materials we need for the signs, and ideally we would want this project done before spring. And I was going to provide the labor and all that stuff for the erecting of the signs. And Lake Cumberland Tourism is promoting this on their website with a picture of the map. And the Lake Cumberland Bluegrass Council of the Boy Scouts has agreed to keep these signs and maps clean and picked up where they're at. My role is as my Eagle project to install these signs. And I would like to ask the Pulaski County government to partner with these other organizations and help create a more user-friendly access point to each location. Since the materials were donated, I need the Pulaski County government to provide a skid steer and 1 to 2 loads of rock per location to improve the existing walking trail to the water. It will aid when entering a kayak or canoe, also asking to pay for the signs with a total cost of $2,100. And I have a thing of the map if you all want to look at it closer.
You need $2,100 for the signs, is that what I'm?
Yes.
And then
sir.
some in-kind help with the skid steer as they're doing the paths to the.
Motion.
Second.
Give him $2,100.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let me ask you one question. Have we got all of our bases covered with Fish and Wildlife and everything we need to do
Yes.
to have the access and have easement?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, well, we're proud of you. Thank you, and thank you, Brooke, because I know you've had a lot of work in this too, and behind the scenes.
Thank you.
But we're pulling for you. Keep going. Get that done. Thank you, Austin. Next, then, Mr. Gary Bales would like to speak to us for a few minutes here.
It'll be short. I've lived here almost all my life, and I have never heard of this guy. Vermont Garrison. He was a triple ace and flew in 3 wars. He was an ace in World War II. He shot down 7. He was a double ace in Korea. And to be an ace, you have to shoot down 5 enemy aircraft. He also flew in Vietnam. spent 30 years in the military. He was born in 1915 in Mount Victory. I can't believe I hadn't heard of this guy. I mean, I spent 5 years in the Air Force myself, but he was a fighter pilot and very low-key, obviously, because nobody's, I don't know, does anybody know this guy? Probably one of the greatest fighter pilots that America has ever known. And he's right here in the county. And we have no plaque, no monument for this guy. Probably most, or some of you have heard of Colonel Robin Olds. He was kind of like a Top Gun maverick in the Air Force. And he said of his vice commander, and Garrison was his vice commander at the time, he said, of the many hundreds I've served with, Gary was one of the greatest, as pilot, as gentleman, as officer, and as friend. I really think the county should look into this and see if we can put up a memorial to this guy. As far as I know, I don't know if he's got any relatives left. He died in, let's see, 1994. And I don't know if he's got any existing relatives around here or not. But I think it's something that the court should consider, and because we need to honor these guys.
There's several garrisons in the Mount Victory area.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And was there a Garrison Electric way back?
I'm not sure.
Not that I know of.
In the 50s? Yeah.
What was his first name?
But
Vermont.
First name again, sir?
Vermont.
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 And absolutely amazing. I was shocked. And I just hope the county will consider this. I've got some copies. I pulled off 10 pages of this guy off of Wikipedia. And actually, I ran out of paper.
You're fine. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
But I hope you guys will consider this, because this guy is amazing. I couldn't believe it. And I thank you for your time.
That was brought to my attention too, just probably 3 months ago. Somebody brought some information in, and yeah, it's quite a read to get to see what all he's done, but.
Don Linville.
He's buried in Arlington?
Maybe.
Buried in
Yeah, he's
Arlington?
buried in Arlington. He died out in Mountain Home, Idaho. And I don't know, apparently that's where he retired out of the Air Force. Flunked out of pilot training.
So could we put a plaque up in the courthouse here somewhere or something?
Maybe we need
In
to,
honor?
maybe we need to do some research and
Research
find
on it?
out what would be the most fitting. I don't know what the most fitting thing would be, but I think we need to honor him in some way. I don't know whether to do it here or out in the Mount Victory area, or, let's just maybe have a committee look at that and figure out the best way to honor this man, because he is a hero, and he's right here from
Yeah.
Pulaski County.
It's amazing.
That's
Thank you
awesome.
so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you,
time.
Thank you. Okay, well, if no one has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you all.